Welcome to Shero, Be Your Own Hero podcast, where we will discover that we can be our own heroes in our lives and that we don't have to always look outside for a mentor and for Shero somebody else. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, but I'm saying that sometimes it might be better to realize that you've been your own hero in your life because sometimes it's hard to find somebody else who can fulfill that role. And it's also can be very uplifting for you to realize, oh, I've been able to be a hero for myself by letting this unfortunate traumatic event that I went through, whether it was sexual abuse or losing a loved one or losing a friend or having a relationship end or losing your job, that you were able to rise above that incident and be able to strengthen you and to destroy you with your companion. And, you know, speaking from personal experience, I've definitely have had some of those experiences in my life. And I have chosen to let them strengthen me. And yes, there have been times where they've broken me down and made it harder for me to live because I've been depressed or I've been more anxious or nervous because of them. But ultimately, I didn't let myself as well in that state of being broken down for a very long time. And I got myself back up by going to therapy and by surrounding myself with very supportive friends and family and those that were able to help me help guide me through that journey. And so today's episode will be about the general view of personal things that I've gone through that I consider I've been a hero in my life. And then the next episode will be going into more detail of some of those events and breaking them down into how they have affected and changed my life, and how they have impacted me more today than how they impacted me when I first disclosed about them and when I was first healing from them. Healing was an ongoing process. It doesn't end, unfortunately. And I think that's actually definitely in disguise because in order to heal and let go of something completely, you're going to be working on your entire life. And that's something definitely hard. Oh, and also I will want to interview others who have gone through similar experiences, like I mentioned in the beginning of this introduction. So please email me if you want to be interviewed, and you can go into your experience as much as you are comfortable with, and being able to share what you're comfortable with. Because I know sometimes things can be really personal and it can be hard to open up about them. So I will leave my email in the podcast description for you if you are interested. Hi. So today's episode will be about what ever-changing butterfly brings to me and how being taken advantage of can change your life. And on a side note, I was thinking of creating a time when I can be available on Saturdays to be with my audience from the podcast, the individuals that have NVLD, and possibly their parents too, to sit with them and talk about podcast topics or other challenges you may have because of NVLD, and create a safe place, a support circle where you can talk about private topics that stay in that group. Would you be able to join me at 10 a.m. Pacific time zone? I would like to thank everyone who has donated or contributed to my fundraiser on Facebook for the NVLD project. I created this past Tuesday when I decided not to be anonymous anymore online with my friends. Please consider contributing if you can. Every little bit counts. My goal is $600. I'm at $455 already. I do have listener support activated on my podcast also. All of this money from listeners and ads from Anchor will go towards the NVLD project also. I'll include the link for both of these fundraisers in the description so you can have access to them if you're interested in donating to them. So today we'll discuss me not being anonymous anymore and what my pen name Ever-Changing Butterfly means to me, and being taken advantage of and how it can change your life. Please be aware of the topics in this episode being triggering if you or someone you know has or have experienced sexual abuse, suicide, or being taken advantage of. This one is not going to be easy for me to record, so if you hear me being choked up or emotional, that's why. When I started this podcast, I created the pen name Ever-Changing Butterfly because I didn't want anyone except for people close to me to know what I was doing, or that I was doing this. I was okay with my first name being on the podcast because Jennifer is a very common name, but I wasn't okay with my full name, Jennifer Purcell, being on it because I knew people could find me on social media if they looked. I also knew that wasn't as private as just Jennifer. I mean, when I was in college, one of my classes had 5 Jennifers, including me, and we all spelt it the same way. So when you called on one of us in class, you had to use our last initial or maybe a nickname to be very clear about which one you were speaking to. Otherwise, all of us would turn our heads and be like, "What? Which one are you talking to?" I have always also loved butterflies and hummingbirds because whenever I see one, I think they're a strong animal for such a small size. Both animals can migrate miles even though they are so small. The monarch butterfly is one of the butterflies that migrate at least 3,000 miles to get back home. In 2016, the AUK, A-U-K, if you're wondering about the spelling, a journal provided evidence that a hummingbird can migrate 1,200 miles nonstop. That's a lot. So you're probably thinking, okay, these are some great ladybug details, but what in the world does it have to do with NLD? Well, you just mentioned one thing, ladybugs, or at least I did. People who have NLD tend to focus on small details rather than the big picture, or as we like to call it in my house or family, the ladybug and the forest. When I was diagnosed with NLD at age 19, many light bulbs went off in my family because now we knew why so many things were challenging for me. I also knew why it was easier to love tackling challenges in college because I didn't like it when something was too easy. If something was too easy, I wouldn't apply myself as much. I knew I couldn't do many things because I had gotten into UC Berkeley, a university where 18% of the people that apply get accepted. Not only was I the first woman in my family to attend college, but also the first to graduate from college. I did it with NLD. That is why it felt like a 4-year marathon. I've run a marathon, so I know what it feels like to run 26.2 miles. If you ran 4 times that, it would be 104.8 miles. It took me 5 hours, 8 minutes, and 8 seconds to run that marathon. If I had to run 104.8 miles, it could take me at least 20 hours, 24 minutes, and 24 seconds. When I ran that marathon, I was doing it in Carlsbad, and I learned a couple weeks later that I had run it in one second place in my age bracket, which I didn't train for. I just trained for the distance, not for the time. At that time, I was only 17 years old. And like I said, I just trained for running the distance, not for that time period to make me win that prize. I share this because I want people to know who have NVLD to know that they can do sports and be good at them, even though they may have fine motor challenges. I am also someone who has had many challenges in my life before I knew I had an LD or NVLD, same thing. Take a break for water. What I'm about to share with you is very private, but I'm doing this because I want you to know that this can happen to someone who has NLD because of them being more innocent, trusting of others than they should be, and having less life experience than neurotypicals or being naive. When I was growing up, I was sexually abused by my cousin for 6 years. From about 6 years old until I was 12. I disclosed this to my family in late August of 2008. The first person I told was my mom. I had shared it with a friend before I shared it with her, but in doing so, I lost that friendship because my friend didn't respond the way a friend should have responded. I won't tell you all the details of the abuse because that's not necessary and would take too long. But I'll tell you what I've learned because I want you to be able to know the things so that you can be prepared and be a watchdog for yourself and others who have NLD. What I'm about to share with you is what happened in my family. Every family is different, so it may not happen the same way with yours or others. I learned that you can't trust the extended family members that you thought were close to you. They may betray you and your trust. Some of your family members may not believe the victim's story, especially if there is no evidence and it's just a he said, she said case. That was what mine was. About half of my family took the perpetrator's side, my cousin's side, and then a quarter took mine, the victim. There was also a good amount of minimization saying it was just show and tell rather than sexual abuse, which is false. It was sexual abuse. I did not consent to any of it happening. Also, if you were like my family, we were used to we had other people in the family that were abused, and we grew closer because of that. And it's also easier if you got help like you're supposed to, which is therapy. I mean, to heal from it. I've gotten 5 years of therapy for the trauma, and I'm in therapy currently for NLD and for something else that happened earlier this year. If people don't receive or don't get the help they need, then I think they will have more difficult life than they would if they got the help they need. Here's a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh that I want to share with you that expresses what may happen to someone that doesn't get the help they need. Quote, when another person makes you suffer, it is because he suffers deeply within inside himself. His suffering is spilling over. He does not need punishment. He needs help. That's the message he is sending. End quote. That's something I was referring to, was that I got conned by a con artist on Facebook. Again, I'll let you know what I think would be helpful, but not all the details. He made me believe that it was a romantic relationship and he had romantic feelings for me, which I found were not true later on. He convinced me to send him about $1,000 he said he needed for creating his own hospital, which wasn't true. I only got half of that back because after regrettably telling my parents what happened, I was able to get my new credit card and new debit and credit cards. I also changed my phone number and email since that was how we were communicating. I blocked him on Facebook. I was afraid of telling my parents about it because I didn't know how they would respond other than them being mad at me. I tried to run away from home because I was so afraid to tell them, but because they have an app to tell where my phone is, I had the location turned off and I didn't want them to know what I was doing because I didn't want them to know what I was doing. But they were suspicious. They were like, why is she driving so long in the rain? I did eventually stop and pull over off the freeway and let them come meet me. I'm not telling you this to encourage you to do any of the same things I did. I'm telling you these things because I want you to know what my mistakes were and I want you to learn from them. Need another water break. I did have all my devices taken away from me for a few months because my parents couldn't trust me with them. But I have had them back since mid-April now. I started therapy again on my birthday in early April because of this experience, and it was one of the best decisions I have made. Because I was naive and more trusting than I should have been, it was easier for the con artist and my cousin to take advantage of me. I also learned that there are several red flags or warnings that one should know that would have alarmed me about him being a con artist. Some of these were he used broken English, asked for money nonstop, being very religious with communication, questioning things he would tell me. He has more than one name or identity, having me use info to get money, convincing me that he had romantic feelings for me, having me to do things that I didn't feel comfortable doing, using pictures that were not of him but someone else when we communicated, convincing me to think that he was using the money for a good cause. Telling me where he lived was also false because the area code was for Pakistan, not California. The dating app Hinge has some red flags for online safety that I would like to include too. Never send money or share financial information. Protect your personal information. Stay on the platform. Be wary of long distance or overseas relationships. Report all suspicious and offensive behavior. I will include the link in the description of the episode for that. And I'm telling you these things because I want you to be aware of what can happen to someone who isn't careful when they are using the internet. So please be extremely careful when you do use it. I don't think I can express enough how careful you need to be. I also have an emotional support dog, Truffles, that I've had for 10 years because of disclosing to my family about sexual abuse. She's actually in the room with me while I'm recording this. My dog has made it easier for me to be happier in my life because there have been times when I had thought about suicide. I have never planned anything, but because there's no off switch for NLD, and because some of the challenges can be difficult to overcome, or to try to overcome's not the right word, to try to make easier for you to deal with is a better way to phrase it. Sometimes it's really hard for me to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I do try to remind myself that there is a light, because if I don't, then I get discouraged. Again, I share this not to encourage you to do this, but to let you know that it can happen, and I want you to learn from my experiences and mistakes. I also want you to know that if you have gone through any of what I have gone through, that you are not alone. I shouldn't have been afraid of sharing the con artist experience with my parents and my brother, because they have been extremely supportive of me and have been my rock. If you have family like this, you should listen to the song Stand By You by Rachel Platten. All these experiences have made me who I am today, emotionally strong. I can tackle any challenge that NLD throws at me, and I don't give up easily. I've also had to lose 40 pounds 3 times in my life because of eating to absorb emotions and not being able to release my emotions the healthy way. The healthy way is not bottling them up, but to let yourself express that emotion, whether it's positive or negative, whenever you need to and for as long as you need to. I have been expressing my emotions better since I disclosed to my family about my sexual abuse, and sometimes I can't control them, especially when I need to cry. So I let myself cry until it seems to be enough, and sometimes I can't control it or stop it. This is not always easy. Please listen to Titanium by Madeline Bailey. Sorry, that was my dog. Skyscraper by Demi Lovato. Survivors by Low Cash. Victorious by Linda Hidalgo. And This Is Me from The Greatest Showman and Warrior by Demi Lovato. All of those songs talk about strong people and the characteristics that they have because of the experiences they went through. I want you to know this because it is healthy to express emotions when needed, because if you keep them bottled up inside too long, when you finally release them, they usually are more powerful than they were at the beginning. I've learned a lot for someone who is only 24 years old. I feel like I'm very mature for my age because of the life experience I've had. Here's a quote that I want to read to you. When something bad happens to you, you have 3 choices. 1, you can let it define you. 2, you can let it destroy you. 3, or you can let it strengthen you. End quote. Unknown. I decided to not let any of these bad things define or destroy me, but to let them strengthen me and change the person who I was for the better. So please feel free to reach out to me if you want to tell me about any life experiences that you have gone through and are comfortable with sharing with me. You can email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. I will put that email in the description for you of the podcast. So whether it's NLD, sexual abuse, being taken advantage of, or being conned by a con artist, or thinking about suicide, or trying to lose weight, I and others who have NLD still have to deal with these challenges today. And I hope you learned some new things today. And I would like to talk to you next Friday. and have a wonderful week. Bye.
I hope you were able to get some insight and some lessons and messages out of this first episode of Shero, Be Your Own Hero. And I hope that you will be able to use it to help you guide yourself through whatever you might be going through, whether it's challenging for you or maybe you know somebody else who's going through something that's challenging for them, and be able to help them be there and help you yourself be there. I look forward to chatting with you next Saturday again about how you can be your own hero.